Hello, my name is Katie Klimacek. Today is March 26th, 2009. It is 2:45, and we are here with one of our veterans. Can you please state your name?
My name is Kevin Kelly.
We have a few questions for you, Mr. Kelly. What age did you join the Army in?
That takes arithmetic, around 22. But I have to tell you, I didn't join the Army, I was drafted.
Okay.
And I was drafted when I was 22.
Were you willing to be drafted, or was it?
Oh, I was very willing. I wanted to serve my country. And I was a young high school student during World War II. And I felt that the threat of communism was significant, and I wanted to join the service. I didn't want to join it because if I joined the service, I had to do it for 3 or 4 years, and I didn't want to stay 3 or 4 years. 2 years were enough, so I waited till I was drafted.
Before you went into the service, did you have like any jobs before that?
I went to Paul Smith's College, and I went to MVCC, and then I was drafted.
When you went off to war, what was like the basic training that you received?
The basic training I received was in Camp Chaffee, Arkansas, and I went there for 16 weeks, and I learned how to be an artilleryman. I learned how to be an infantryman. 8 weeks of infantry training and 8 weeks of artillery training. So that was my basic training. And then I was right away shipped to Japan to go to school to be a medic. They didn't want artillerymen or infantrymen.
So you would help the people that were wounded and stuff?
Yes.
What were your feelings when you were in Japan and Korea? Did you feel like a sense of hate that these people were invading us, or did you just want to do it for the country?
I don't feel hate, but we were fighting the North Koreans and we were fighting the Chinese, and probably there was no love for the Chinese or the North Koreans. But I don't remember feeling hate. But that's not in my nature either. So, yeah.
When you did go to Japan, do you know where you were stationed?
I was stationed first in Japan and Tokyo for a while, a few days, a week or two. Then they sent me to the island of Utica, which is off the coast of Hiroshima, where I spent 4 weeks learning how to be a doctor, how to be a combat medic. And I spent 4 or 6 weeks there. Then I took a train to a southern city in Japan called Sasebo, and stayed there overnight. I stayed there overnight and went to, took a boat to Busan, Korea.
When you were training, what was your most memorable experience during your time?
Oh, during training? Well, the experiences were serving in Arkansas, training in Arkansas, awfully hot country. There was nothing any more memorable about training than the heat of Arkansas. It was hot. And we trained we were in a company of 220 men, where we'd go out every morning, sometimes after 4 o'clock, sometimes after 5, but never after 6. Spend the whole day out in the hot sun, marching, and we wore full uniforms, fatigues. And apparently the Army thinks you're best when you're covered up with cotton, so that the cotton gets wet and it cools you off. But that was awfully hot in Arkansas. We practiced shooting and we practiced ducking bullets, and it was all kind of a memorable thing.
When you were at camp, did you like meet any people that like became your close friends during the war?
In Korea, in Camp Chaffee, Arkansas, we were 16 weeks with a bunch of men, and after we left Camp Chaffee, some of us went to Germany, some of us went to Japan, some of us went to Korea. I was with nobody from Camp Chaffee in Korea, but in Korea I was with friends. But again, that was in the days of the draft, when you had rotation, and after you earned enough points, you could go home. So I never had any more than 16 weeks of friendship with any one person in that whole year of service.
When during like the war, did you ever want to go home? Like, did you ever kind of
Sure.
feel homesick and
You
stuff?
always wanted to go home.
How did you keep in touch with home? Like through mail, you know?
The government supplied us with very thin paper, which we wrote on, and we didn't write. I don't think ballpoint pens were invented. They were invented, but they weren't in wide use. We used regular pen and ink. And the very thin paper worked very well. I can't remember what they called it. But the government paid for the postage, so that didn't cost anything. We didn't have telephones. There were no telephone lines in Korea. Oh, we did have telephones from this outfit to that outfit, but they were thin wires, and they were only powered by just batteries, regular batteries. So we did communicate, but I did write a lot of letters. I wrote letters every day. That was my entertainment, writing letters.
Were any of your letters that you wrote, were they censored? Like, did like your like sergeant like?
That's
look
my
over them?
disappointing part of the story. At the beginning, before they sent us to Korea, they put us in a room, probably just like this, and they said, "You men are all going to Korea, and when you're in Korea, we're fighting an enemy, and we don't want you to keep a journal. You can't keep a journal, you can't keep a diary, and when you write home, don't tell people where you are, don't tell them the names of your friends, because if they capture you, they're going to torture you, and they don't want to know who my friends are. They don't want my friends to know why." So I didn't keep track of any of the names of any of my buddies, other than the letters I wrote home, and that was very, very thin as far as names went.
Can you please describe your relationship with the Korean population or the Republic of Korean soldiers?
Korea was divided up into North and South, but where the soldiers were, for the most part, for the whole part, I was stationed very close to the combat area, the main line of resistance, and there were no natives in that area. The natives had all been evacuated because the Army didn't want us to mistake a Korean, The Army didn't want us to mistake a Korean for an enemy, so we saw no natives. Any relationship, we did have Korean service workers who dug ditches and dug trenches when we didn't dig them, and they stuck to their own. We didn't see them very often.
Did you have any relationship with African Americans either?
Yes, we had a complete relationship with African Americans. Yeah, Africa was, we served in the Army. It was the first time the Army had been integrated, formally integrated. And we served with the African Americans, and we had no problems whatsoever. We served with Puerto Ricans, which was quite unusual. Puerto Ricans spoke their own language, and they played their own music, and that was kind of frustrating because they lived a world apart from us. So we did have trouble, and I don't mean trouble, but understanding them. And the Koreans had a magic, they would put spoons between their fingers and make all kinds of noise with these, play all kinds of rhythm. Fascinating, but they served with us hand and foot, and no troubles at all.
Was there like anything funny that you experienced during the war?
Well, it's just not, no, maybe my mind doesn't retain funny things, but I do remember one morning we had two men come in this was an odd thing. They had two men come in on litters whose legs were paralyzed, and they were up on a litter like this. Their knees were up, and the doctor, who at the time was an obstetrician, and he looked at these people and he interviewed them, and they could talk, but they were paralyzed from the waist down. And he got on the phone and he called farther back and said something to his superiors. And the next thing I knew, he said to me, "Kelly," he said, "prepare a couple of syringes of water." I said, "Water?" He said, "Yeah." So I prepared a syringe of sterile water, as sterile as water got. It was all just boiled snow. And then he said to the man, he said, "I have just a new medicine from the States that I'm going to give you." And he said, "It's going to be painful, and I'm going to inject it in your legs, in your leg. And when the pain is gone, you'll be able to straighten out your legs." And it took about 15 or 20 minutes, half an hour at the most, and the legs straightened out. Well, this was for two people. And next litter jeep came in carrying another two people and another two people. And he did this time after time for maybe 2 hours or 3 hours. And we found out that it was hysteria. These people had been stationed in a dangerous spot without enough activity. And being an obstetrician, he knew what he knew. I guess their experience of pregnant ladies being hysterical, having hysteria. And he tried to do this. And actually, he had conferred with his senior doctors. And that evening, we had colonels and medical seniors come to our bunker and interview him and not interview any of the patients. They were all gone and cured. But they decided that the men on that hill had to dig deeper trenches, keep busy, get more tired. And it worked. They worked them harder in the daytime and worked them harder at the nighttime.
What was your reaction to the relief of General MacArthur by President Truman?
That occurred before I got to Korea. And I supported President Truman 100% in that respect, because the buck stops with him. So it's that simple. Yeah. It's funny, General MacArthur was relieved of his office. He wasn't relieved. He was fired as commander of the Far East, but he returned to the United States, and after the war ended, I was stationed. I came back to the United States, and I was stationed at 90 Church Street, which is right near where the World Trade Center is. And my office was on the 12th floor on 90 Church Street, the 13th floor, I'm not sure which. And General MacArthur had an office the next floor up. So he and I were in the same office building. Of course, he was a general and I was a sergeant. But anyway, that was my contact with him. And I never saw him.
Even though you were studying to be a doctor, did you get any injuries? Were you ever injured or anything?
No, I was never injured. I had the flu when I was in first week I was in Korea for 2 weeks, but I never had any injuries.
Yeah. And what was like a daily life for you? Like, what did you go through?
As a combat medic, I was stationed in a bunker on the front line when we were on line. And my duty was every morning to go to the bunkers where people were sick or where they were recovering from injuries and needed their dressings changed or looked at. And so I would make a sick call or recommend them to go see the doctor. So that was my duty. As a medical technician, I was changed from a combat medic to an aid station technician, where in the aid station, my job consisted of helping the doctor do what had to be done. And in the morning, there was a sick call where people who were sick came in, and if they had diarrhea, we gave them the right medicine. If they had constipation, if they had earaches, we gave them the right medicine. And that worked. When there were battles, when there were injured people, we had to prepare the injured people so the doctor could treat them. And what I mean by that is we had to cut clothes off. We had the best scissors in the world. Would cut leather boots right off, and belts and clothes, and cut right through them, and not cut the patient. But we also had to give shots. All injured people had to have a penicillin shot, a painkiller shot, and a tetanus shot. And so we had to prepare those shots and administer them. So that was that.
Did you ever see like any men die?
Yeah.
Was it like kind of like sad, like touching, or was
it just, to say it louder?
Was it like touching to you to see like these men die?
Very disappointing to have people die. It's very disappointing, and absolutely, especially disappointing. There are two kinds of death for me, which were, one was when the doctor lost a patient, but the other was when I lost a patient and was incapable and not trained to give blood or to do the right thing. But it's disappointing to see a person die in any circumstances.
Did you receive any medals or like any awards for being in the
Well, when you get home, you know about the medals. In fact, the truth is that there's only one medal I was ever given in Korea, and it was everybody who serves in the infantry gets a combat infantryman's badge. It serves in the infantry on the front line, and it's an attractive badge. I didn't serve in the infantry, so I didn't get it, but I did get a combat medic's badge, which is a sterling silver badge, which is very nice. And I did receive it, and it was given to me, not in any ceremony or anything, but they said, here's a medal for you, Kelly. So I received a combat, but I also, when I got home, was told that I received the United Nations Award and the Korean Service Award and 3 battle stars, the 3 bronze battle stars, which go on one of those 2 medals, and I've never bought them or seen them, but they just mean that I served in 3 battles, which I had served in.
When you were in the service, was there anything unusual, like anything that was strange or that you saw?
Doesn't come to mind. Of course, everything is strange. Yeah, everything is strange to you. Different. I even met Korean people. Not many.
Are there any people, or is there really like anybody that you remember specifically from the war that like you can still remember?
Oh, there are a lot of people I still remember. We had interesting doctors in our aid station. First doctor we had was a 25-year-old man from St. Louis named Dr. Kustoff, Kustoff, and he'd matriculated through college and was a physician at age 25. Very young, and very nervous about being in combat. So nervous, in fact, that he petitioned to get out of Korea, and he did. He got assigned to Japan. The difference was is that in Korea, I was in Korea for 9 months, period. He went to Japan, so he was in Japan for 18 months. So that was the difference you pay if you go to a less dangerous location. But the next doctor was, I don't even remember the next doctor's name, but he was an awfully nice man. We had a doctor from Colombia. The United States, the Korean War was a United Nations activity. And although Harry Truman and the United Nations decreed it, there were other United Nations troops in Korea, and there were Colombians, and there were Dutchmen, Hollanders, Thailanders, I don't know what else, but there were, we served for a while, we served next to a Colombian outfit. We replaced a battalion from the Netherlands. We had English troops, and we had Canadian troops, and we had Australian troops. The only humorous thing was that we were in Japan training, and I was at what was called a Chaffee roadhouse. It was an English. Let me back up. In Japan, and we were in training, and there was an English. I'll think of it. Keep the faith. We'll cut this up. Restaurant. What do you call it?
Pub?
PX.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I was in Japan training, and there was an English PX in the city where I was at that time, was Kuri in Japan. And the PX served English troops, and it was, the English troops were from England, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. And I sat next to a couple of fellows who were from England, and they said, and I ordered a steak, and they said, of course, that's not really steak, it's kangaroo meat, but don't tell that to the Australians. But anyway, there was a lot of dissension between the four groups because the English soldiers were paid $29 a month, and the Canadian, and they were conscripts, they were draftees just like me. The Canadian soldiers were paid something like $200 a month. They all were a volunteer army, and there was an awful lot of dissension between the two groups. So that's the end of that.
Were there any experiences that left a great impression on you?
I suppose, but I don't know. No, I'll pass on that one.
Okay. When did you finally find out that you were going to be taken out? Like, how did you find out that you were no longer going to have to serve for the war? Like,
Oh, well, that was simple because in Korea they set up a rating system, and you were given so many points for each area you were in. And if you're in South Korea, you got 1 or 2 points. If you're in the middle, you got 2 or 3 points. But if you're in a combat zone, you got 4 points. And when you got to 36 points, you could go home. And I suppose Japan was also the same 36 points. So all of the time I was in Korea, all of the time I was overseas, I was waiting to go home. Waiting was in capital letters, is what I wanted to do. And all I wanted to do was accumulate those points. So after 8.5 months, I knew I was pretty close to going home. And interesting enough is that if every soldier gets R&R after 3 months or 6 months or 2 months or something, whatever their company commander or whatever their division brigade commander wanted figured out for them to go. Well, anyway, I was never offered to go on R&R. R&R means you can take a vacation for 5 days. A vacation can be at Japan or Hong Kong, but boy, Hong Kong is a long ways from Korea. So I was offered to go on R&R 3 weeks before I had the opportunity to go home. The problem is that if I went on R&R, I'd have to stay in Korea an extra month because you have to be quarantined after you've been to Japan. And I didn't want to be quarantined, so I didn't go on R&R. So I spent 9 months in Korea.
Was your family happy to finally have you come home?
They acted it.
Were you kind of like, did you have a lot of mixed emotions when you came home too, like sad, happy, just joyful?
I was happy to be home, but the funny thing, this isn't funny or sad thing, I came home, I landed in Japan. Yeah, I landed in San Francisco. I came home and I landed in San Francisco, and then I flew across the United States. But when my boat landed in San Francisco, I called home, and my mother seemed kind of distant on the telephone. Well, it took me 3 or 4 days to get home. But by the time I got home, I realized, I was told, that 2 of the men that I had worked with before I went to Korea had drowned in a boating accident, a fishing accident on Eerieville Reservoir down near Eerieville, New York. So there was more concern with burying my 2 friends than there was with my getting home. But anyway, I was excited to get home, and everybody was happy to see me. She projects pretty well.
She's doing well. Alice had a question. Can Alice ask a question? Can Alice ask a question?
Oh, sure, yes.
What did you feel about the war ending neutral, nothing happening? Like, did you feel that one side had to win, or?
Can't hear you. Come on up closer.
Like, the Korean War, like, nothing happened after the war. Like, nobody won, nobody lost. Like, what was your feeling?
Okay, you can pretend to say it again, or do you want to be on screen? Come on up here and be on screen and say it.
Oh, she doesn't want
Okay. Was I disappointed that nothing happened after the Korean War? Sure, I was disappointed, and I thought that it was a natural thing. And you know, I just read a book called The Coldest Winter by David Halberstam, and it's a long book. It's 600 pages long. Absolutely terrific, and it gives a lot of background into General MacArthur, the United Nations, the United States, Harry Truman, and one of the things that's the interesting thing about this book, one of the conclusions he came to is that Mao Zedong, the leader of China, was very happy that the war ended the way it did, in that his attitude is that it was the first time the communists had brought the United States to a halt, and he was very happy about it. To answer your question directly, I was disappointed but the status quo is fine with me. I wish they'd get back together. I still feel that North Korea has a problem that should be cured, but America can't do everything.
You don't know what else to say? Okay. Then how would you you would ask him if there's anything else?
Is there anything else that you would want to add, or anything that you want to say before we
Well, no, I think, I can't think of anything really, but I think this is a great project, and that's why I volunteered for it. And I'd say you've done a good job today, and I wish that there weren't wars, and that may come of this. Men love to beat themselves in the press and say, I can do it. And that's what scares me. The war on drugs is a scary thing. Look at what's happening in Mexico. Look what's happening in Texas. And that's going to happen all over the United States. And I just can't see making rules to give people the ability to charge so much for drugs. I think they ought to legalize them and get over the whole thing. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay, good. I guess we're supposed to knock knuckles.
You can stop it for 1
That
second.
again or do that again, like knocking knuckles.
Oh, you want him to knock knuckles
Yeah.
again?
Can you knock knuckles again?
She was gonna take. She wants you to do that again.
I've never done this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have, but I've never been taught how to do
You
it.
can stop for a second.
You got it? Okay.
She did. Did you hear what I asked?
Yeah, why'd they choose you to become a medic?
Yes.
When I've been trained as an artilleryman and infantry,
Yes.
why did you become a medic?
Okay.
Yeah.
Why did, do you know why they chose you to become a medic after you trained for all this, like Army, the guns and stuff?
What? That's a good question. No, I don't know. I never did find out, but I never looked too far. But I really wasn't anxious to become a medic. When they told me in college that I was going to take the zoology and have to dissect a frog, I quit college. But when it came time to be a medic, I didn't want to be. It's kind of funny. When it came time to be a medic, I said, "Not me. I don't want to be a medic." I said, "I quit college because I didn't want to dissect a frog. Don't you have any other schools to send me to?" They said, "Well, we can send you to." There are a lot of schools. They said there are cook school, tank school, truck driver school, signal corps, clerk typist. I said, "Any school but medic." And they said, "Well, we only have 2 schools open right now. One is medic and the other is mortician." I said, "I'll be a medic." So that did. But anyway, yeah, I was happy to be a medic. It was a sad thing when people died. It was a sad thing to see people hurt. But it's a lot better helping people than it is shooting people. So I found that was good. Yeah.
If you were given the choice between medic or infantry, what would you have chose to fight or to do that?
Well, you see, that's a gamble, and all of life is a gamble. But this gamble was the gamble in Korea was, what are your prime focus? What is your desire? My desire was to get home. I wanted to accumulate my points, 36 points, and get out of there as fast as I could. That was even more important to me than safety. So I stayed on the front line. Now, nobody offered me the chance to go back, but that was, and I don't know whether I would have stayed. I don't know the answer to that question.
And I see you've brought some pictures with you.
Oh, I have some pictures. I have some pictures here that I don't know if you can see them, but this is after the end of the war.
I'll take them to the camera because she can't come
Okay.
any
Oh,
closer.
I was gonna
Oh.
just like zoom.
Can you see it here?
Yeah.
That picture is taken after the end of the war. The medics were the last people on line, and they had to make sure that the sanitary facilities were destroyed completely. And that's now in what's called the demilitarized zone. 3 miles each side of the front line have been fenced off in Korea for the past 50 years. And actually it's 50 years with no humans walking in that area. So there are all kinds of animals and trees and vegetation. Once the front line opens up, once that area, it'll be a great spot for ecologists to go looking at what is untouched area. But we had to make sure that the sanitary facilities, the bathrooms, had been destroyed and taken care of and cleaned up. So that was our walk. In that picture is a picture of North Korea. We had to walk down that hill every when we went on patrols to the river, which was a dividing line, and then up the hill on the other side to get to the Koreans, North Koreans, which we didn't do. This picture here is a picture of is a picture of me, and I'm on this side over here, on the left, and with a helmet and a bulletproof jacket on called a flak jacket, with a doctor and a sergeant who was corpsman, same job as me, and so that was in the springtime. And that has a picture of a litter on the side, plus it's a bunker made out of sandbags. This one here is me by a Jeep, a litter Jeep, to show you just, that one is a picture of me by a litter Jeep to show you what the Jeep is in the background, and in front of it is a trailer. So I guess that's it. This is a real, another real picture of a trench. And that's a real picture of a trench. Another one?
Oh, okay. Thank you for spending your time here and giving us the information that we needed.
It's been my pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
I did this just for you. I worked all but I did this 2 years ago or more, because my wife wanted me to have a history to give to the kids. And so that's my history for my kids. And so it wasn't so much for you. And a lot of it's derived from, because it's 50 years. I can't remember all that.
It's true.
Yeah. All right.
What it was like when you got back to the States? How was the adjustment? Like, that was another thing that we had talked about.
I was only gone a year. I was only gone a year, and if you ask me what the adjustment was like, it's my human nature to go with the flow.
Right.
So I didn't have a problem. I got home, excuse me, at the end of September, or the end of August, one of the two, and I went back to work and started college the 1st of January. So I didn't have any adjustment whatsoever. I just went with the flow. Yeah.
How was the jet lag?
How was the jet lag?
Jet lag of coming home? Well, the jet lag is kind of interesting. I took a boat home. It took me 18 or 20 days to come home. And so there wasn't any jet lag. And you know the funny thing? On the way to Korea, on the boat, I took a boat to Korea. And on the way to Korea, I had KP. I had to do kitchen duty every other day for 14 days. So I had 7 days of washing pots and pans. I'm the best pan washer there ever was. I got to Japan and I said, no more KP. And actually, at Itajima, I did have KP a little bit. In Korea, I didn't have KP because they had Korean nationals brought up to do that kind of stuff. Give me a minute to get back to the question now. I had more to say.
Jet lag.
Yeah, jet lag. Oh yeah. Coming home, I had 18 days on the ship, and the ship took the southern route to the United States, which went right by Hawaii. So we could see Hawaii, but we didn't stop off there. But it was warm. It was in August or early September. And so I sat on deck for 18 days wishing that I had KP to do. But I didn't. And I didn't get a sunburn either, which is kind of, for a thin-skinned Irishman, it's dangerous to sit in the sun. But I did it, yes, okay.
I have a few more questions
All
that
right.
we didn't get.
It's just your service history.
What was your branch of service?
My rank?
Yeah.
My rank was Sergeant E2, which is, I don't know what, a staff sergeant, which is what it was.
Where did you enter into the service?
I entered into service. I was drafted into Utica, and we went to the railroad station in Utica and took a train to Syracuse. And at Syracuse, we went into a building, and I can't remember the name of it, and there were about 40 of us. And we all had to swear that we would serve the United States. And then they said, and we need 7 volunteers for the Marines. Well, the Marines had been particularly knocked apart in Korea, and nobody wanted to be a Marine. And they said, we need 7 volunteers for Korea. And nobody volunteered. So they said this, they looked us out and they went, you, and you stepped forward 1 step. So they did welcome to the Marine Corps. And a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, went into the Marines. And he was married and he had a wife, and he was a nice guy. And I almost cried when he went into the Marines. Poor guy, I said, I'll never see him again. He ended up being stationed in San Diego for the next 2 years. I ended up being stationed in Korea. And so, anyway, it's just pot luck. Yeah.
What date did you enter the service?
Okay. The date I entered the service was April 16th, give or take a day. And I was married April 16th, give or take a day. So that's a memorable time in my life. And the biggest battle I saw was April 16th. But the middle of April is a lot of memories, some good and some bad.
What date were you discharged?
I was released from the Army. I have no idea. I was discharged in 1960 because it's an 8-year contract when you're drafted. But I was only, 15th of January was when I was to that income tax time.
Okay, thank you for that part again, yeah.
Good. As long as the battery's hold up, I'll...
Yeah. I was just, because we're going to clip these things, but this is what you're doing.
Did you work with any Korean doctors?
Did I work with, not until I got home and got sick. No, not in Korea. No, we didn't have, we had one Korean sergeant in our outfit. His name was Kokan Soo. And Kokan Soo was an awfully nice man, and he had been Sergeant Kokan Soo. And he had been in the Army since the beginning of the war. And he was a nice man, and he had a wife on Cheju-do. And Cheju-do is an island at the south, or Kojido, at the southern tip off Busan. And Kokan Soo was worked with us, very efficient, and he was a nice man all the time. I was there. He was right there with us. He helped us, and we helped him.
As long as you're feeling good.
I'm feeling pretty good.
Do you have anything else that you want to ask Alice? I was just looking through the history again. This is wonderful.
Well, it's thanks to the letters, you know. And I smuggled, I didn't have to smuggle them. I said we were told not to keep a journal.
Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing about that is that I did keep some letters and things in my duffel bag. But one night, they said, we're moving out. I said, good, you can take this too. One night they said, we're moving out, we're going online. This was at 9 o'clock at night. I said, when? I said, when? You have to be in the truck and